A new world order. This has been a topic that's been spotlighted for years now, and a lot of people continue to overlook it or ignore it because they do think that it's never going to happen because it's just been warned about for so long. But this is very similar to like the dollar losing its reserve currency status. A lot of people think that that's also impossible, but these things happen over time. Dominance around the US dollar has been eroding for well over a decade now. You could go back to 2008, or you could even look prior to 2008. This has been something that's been a very slow burn, and it has been something that's also becoming a reality. But outside of that, I have a lot to talk about with this new world order. Specifically, I want to go over a lot of information from the BIS, from the IMF, and even, highlighting the tariffs and the trade war. So sit back, relax. Welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Nick. For those that are new to the channel, hopefully by the end of this video, you do become a subscriber. This is going to be a little bit of a longer video, so I do apologize ahead of time, but there is a lot of information that I actually want to put a spotlight on. Number one, let's actually take a look at Japan and China, because we have a post here from Gold Telegraph saying, suddenly the world is finally waking up to the fact that Japan and China are the largest holders of US treasuries. Yeah, we've always looked at Japan as like a big buyer of US debt. And if we think about what's going on here, we already know that China has stated that they vowed to fight to the end regarding this trade war. Just this past week, central bank officials from China and Japan met to discuss tariffs, eyes open. Now, what's interesting about this is that if Japan and China start to move against the US and start unloading US treasuries, what would that ignite? It would ignite the US pushing forward on stablecoin initiatives in the US, incentivizing US dollar denominated stablecoin issuers to buy and hold treasuries. This is where I kind of think about the problem reaction solution idea. Now, we already know that we're moving towards a digital system. I don't think that I need to tell you guys that. And if we're thinking about the biggest accelerant around that, it is stablecoins. Stablecoins are becoming such a huge part of the financial system, and it's kind of going unnoticed from the retail side. But this is the perfect environment and the perfect excuse for the US to accelerate and push forward on stablecoins, which is happening now with legislation and the open embracement of USD denominated stablecoins. But outside of this, what's really going to push China over the edge to potentially drop their US treasuries? Well, we know that China just recently halted rare earth exports to the US amid the trade war tensions. Now, this happened, over the last 24 hours. This was one big move. But this is in response to the U.S. tariff cancellation, which they tried to urge the U.S. to cancel the tariffs, which they did get a response back from Trump, which, he did clarify no tariff exceptions, specifically, China. He said especially China in his response, which is why we did see, China halt rare earth exports to the U.S. But the big thing here is, what about the treasuries? Beyond China, we know that there has been a lot of trade deals being made. There's 130 nations that are now currently in talks with the US around potential deals being made. Now, we do know that this does involve Japan. Japan is one of the few significant economies within this that are already in discussion. India, Korea are a few other ones. But when it comes to China, we are focused on what China is doing next. We focus on China specifically because outside of Japan, China is the other this is one of the largest holders of US treasuries. But is all of this just noise? Because we also know that during the first term around Trump, he also had, tariff plans and tariff discussions. Is this all noise, and could we just completely ignore all of this stuff around tariffs and the trade war? I don't think that we should. I actually think that we should focus on this because I do believe that this is accelerating the pushback on the US dollar. But more so, I think that this is accelerating the push towards a multipolar financial system. And we've been warned about this for years. And no, it's not just from specific names, it's actually from global organizations. But let's actually start off with Ray Dalio, because we have breaking news. Bridgewater founder Ray Dalio says that he's concerned that the global monetary system will break down. Well, we are going from multilateralism, which is largely an American world order type of thing, to a unilateral world order in which there's great conflict. Now, I actually, think that we are going into a completely different world around the financial system. Again, it's a multipolar world. But here we have a video clip of Ray Dalio saying that he's worried about something worse than a recession. We have something that is much more profound. We have a breaking down of the monetary order. And I do agree with this. I think that a new world order is on its way. A lot of people are just completely ignoring this, but we already know that fiat currency itself is starting to break down. And the cracks are showing us the truth around fiat currency, which is it's one big Ponzi tied to absolutely nothing. But check this out.
I think that right now we are at a decision-making point and very close to a recession. And I'm worried about something worse than a recession if this isn't handled well. A recession is 2 negative quarters of GDP, and whether it goes slightly there, we always have those things. We have something that's much more profound. We have a breaking down of the monetary order. We are going to change the monetary order because we cannot spend the amounts of money, so we have that problem. And when we talk about the dollar and we talk about tariffs, we have that. We are having profound changes in our domestic order, how ruling is existing, and we're having profound changes in the world order. Such times are very much like the 1930s. I've studied history, and this repeats over and over again. So if you take tariffs, if you take debt, if you take the rising power challenging the existing power, if you take those factors and look at the factors, those changes in the orders, the systems, are very, very disruptive. How that's handled could produce something that is much worse than a recession.
And he is right here, right? Like how these things are handled around the trade war, this could lead to something much more devastating than just a crash or a recession. That's why we're really kind of looking at how China is reacting to the tariffs. Because again, we look at who's holding the most US treasuries. But we also look at what would happen if we did start to see those US treasuries offloaded by China or even Japan. And I think that that's actually what will greenlight stablecoins in the US to move forward in a big, big way. Now, it doesn't happen overnight, right? Like we're not going to recover overnight from stablecoin issuers just buying up US treasuries. I think that it would start to happen, over the course of like weeks, potentially even months, even technically years. But we're definitely focused on what the US could do to counter these measures taken by like Japan or even China. But it's not just about the tariff war and the trade war. It's what's been happening for years now, since going back to like 2008, which a lot of people still think that we have not bounced back from 2008, myself included. I don't think that we actually fixed anything from 2008. I think that we just grossly printed more money to offset and actually, provide a false sense of, recovery. But over here, we also have, we are changing the monetary order. This is also from Ray Dalio. Big shout out to Subjective Views for this video clip. Check it out.
I'm more worried about the greater dynamic of these conflicts. I'm worried about more serious issues
that are structural,
the financial,
and hard
the
to fix.
political, the financial, the political, and the geopolitical, because they feed on itself if you get a bad one,
Right. Thank you so much for your time today.
I think that this is not a normal recession kind of situation. We are changing the monetary order. In other words, when we start to think there's supply and the demand for debt, and one man's debts are another man's assets, as I said. And then the question is money which is dead, is supposed to be both a medium of exchange and a storehold of wealth. And there are times in history, and this is one of those times in history, that there's a question of whether bonds are an effective storehold of wealth because of this supply demand and
So yeah, I mean, listen, this is where we start to see the entire order around the financial system itself start to move away from what we are currently in. And I think that it really kind of starts with the US utilizing the reserve currency status as a financial weapon. They weaponized the US dollar. They have been weaponizing the US dollar for, decades now. And this is where we kind of look at the life cycle as well around like fiat currencies. Global reserve currencies have historically lasted in cycles of about 100 years as seen on the currency chart. And on the right side, we do have that currency chart here. Here's the actual chart. So you could see, going all the way back to the 1400s, the typical timeline here is anywhere between, 80 to like 110 years. The average here is about 100 years itself. And that's where we really kind of look at the US and we're saying, all right, well, the US dollar, it's over currently the 100-year span. So we're overdue for a big change. I think that we're witnessing it. I think that a lot of the big events that we have been really kind of noticing since 2008 are big accelerators of this new world order. And this is where I look at the global organizations that have been telling us about this for years. For an example, the World Economic Forum in 2015. So we're talking about 10 years ago now. What's the future of American leadership in a multipolar world? Why were we seeing this back in 2015? We know that things have been significantly changing since 2008. And we were warned about this for many organizations from 2008 to now that we are witnessing a change in our financial system. This was 2015. This was 2019. Towards a multipolar system, we must prepare for a possibly turbulent transition to a safer, more efficient international monetary system. This is from the IMF, by the way, where they were also talking about dollar dominance and how things were starting to change even back in 2019. And then in 2023, from Atlantic Council, which is also the same organization that's tracking CBDCs, piece by piece, the BRICS really are building a multipolar world. And yes, Russia has been in support of this. Brazil has been in support of this. Even South Africa has been in support of this. All the BRICS nations really have been, talking about a multipolar world and even launching a multipolar currency. But what I find crazy about all of this is that we were told about this from the global organizations that really are the ones making the big decisions around our financial system anyways. But the World Economic Forum warning us about this back in 2015. Then in 2019, we got this from, the IMF. Like, I just find this very interesting. But this is also why I look at what these big organizations like the BIS have been pushing. For an example, a new report by the BIS America's Office's consultative group on the digital economy discusses ongoing tokenization projects and their potential to improve the financial system. And here we have leveraging tokenization for payments and financial transactions. Now, why would they be providing us this update on tokenization and talking about tokenization in a big way? Well, it's because when we think about these players that are a part of these tokenization initiatives, they're major central banks. Like even the CPMI group, right? We've talked about the CPMI group many times over. This is the Committee on Payments and Market Infrastructure. This group is a part of the BIS, the Central Bank of Central Banks. And if you actually look at what they've been doing, they've been actually working towards the Finternet, which is basically the Internet of Value. It's where they tap into DLT, blockchain, AI with automation. And look at all of the central banks tied to the CPMI group. These are all of the global institutional players. You have, like, think about this. All right. Down the list, you have the Fed tapped in from the US. Okay. You also have all the BRICS nations. Russia, the central bank of the Russian Federation on here, the People's Bank of China, Brazil. I mean, this is insane. South Africa as well. So when we think about all of these big events that are ongoing, and we're seeing so much conflict and all of the big, the pressures building around this trade war and these tariffs, all of these big institutional players, these big banks, and all of these countries are tied back to the same groups that are pushing for a new system. The BIS has been accelerating the push towards the Finternet, the Internet of Value. This is the new financial system. Like, they even highlighted it being the new financial system. And this is why I'm looking at stablecoin issuers. I'm looking at these crypto projects that are also working alongside these big names. Like Ripple, for an example. Ripple is a part of the CPMI group. We've highlighted this many times over. My original view here on stablecoin, issuers being supported in a big way because of the Treasury concern. The U.S. Treasuries, stablecoin issuers are now growing on that list as being the top holders. Tether, for an example, is a massive holder of U.S. Treasuries. Ripple just recently launched RLUSD. How convenient, right? This is also why I said back in November, we are past the beginning stages of Bretton Woods 3. This has been in place since the 2008 financial crisis, when BRICS nations, i.e. Russia, started accumulating massive amounts of gold. Today, we are watching the entire picture come together. CBDCs mixed with gold, stablecoins, alternative payment networks, and systems rising. We are living in the currency revolution, but far too many are still blind to realize what's happening. And this is why I look at blockchain and DLT becoming a crucial pillar for all of this to become a reality. And, I'm investing into specific projects that, in my opinion, will be integrated into, industries like trade finance, even payments. I mean, payments themselves, like the FX market is moving on chain through stablecoins. We already know that cross-border payments themselves, like, this is a highlight around payments themselves, leveraging tokenization. Like, tokenization is now the key to more efficient payments and financial transactions. And this is coming from the central bank of central banks. Like, even the CPMI group is 100% focused on digital innovation and payments, clearing and settlement. And this is all based around token arrangements, aka tokenization. Like, it's kind of crazy that they've given us these outlines, and again, retail is barely looking into this stuff. They're barely reading it. But we already know that we're starting to see everything move towards this multipolar system where there's a CBDC in almost every single nation in the world. Like, even the Atlantic Council, I forgot where it is on here, but they do track CBDC initiatives. And it's crazy because every single central bank out there is now moving towards central bank digital currencies. And a lot of people are still unaware of this, but it's accelerated by all of these big conflicts. Sanctions accelerated the push towards a multi-currency or a multipolar currency developed by the BRICS. All right, well, now we have the trade and tariff discussions, which is only accelerating the pushback against the US dollar and kind of cutting off trade in a big way to the US. Like, all of this is big conflict. It's problem, reaction, solution in the biggest way possible. This is why when we look at a multipolar world that's been warned about from not just people like Ray Dalio, because a lot of people will say, well, Ray Dalio has been warning about this for years and years and years. Yeah, he has been. But what's crazy about this is he's right on target, because we have been told this by the big organizations. Most people barely listened. Most people barely read these, announcements. But when we think about this, all of these big events, the tariffs, the trade war, COVID, the 2008 crisis, these were all big events that were, accelerating and pushing us towards this new system. And we've already been told what the new system is by players like the BIS, which are the facilitators around our, financial system anyways. So how can we prepare for this? Well, number one, I think that we should be looking at the underlying, I don't want to say the underlying players are behind like the foundation here, but stablecoins are technically the foundation for this. So if we're thinking about US treasuries being a big concern, well, then we look at stablecoin issuers. And again, number one on the list is Ripple. I don't really care about Tether because Tether is, unregulated in the US. There's been a lot of concerns around Tether. So more so I look at Circle and Ripple. Now, we can't really invest into Circle, outside of just holding USDC, which there really isn't a point to holding just USDC. So we look at Ripple and we look at the underlying networks that RLUSD is being issued out on. So Ethereum and XRP. So right there, we have two great choices. And then we also look at the foundation behind this like Finternet. So then we look at players like Quant Network, which are also being tapped in a big way. And then we also look at the facilitators around like, currency, movement of currencies. So again, we could still highlight Ripple and XRP. We could also highlight Stellar with XLM. Like tokenization is becoming a big deal. So Hedera, Stellar, Algorand. You really kind of start to see the big picture here on how we can leverage this in our favor, which is investing into the things that could potentially be utilized at scale or in a big way around this. Because again, this is already ongoing. This shift has already started. There's no, oh yeah, we could just move away from this and we could completely, shut this down. No, they're already starting this. The events like 2008 were the beginning stages of all of this to become a reality. So the number one way to look at this is by looking at the technologies behind this and, starting to accumulate them, accumulate gold, accumulate silver, because this is the only way to avoid the collapse of, fiat currency, to really kind of get the best way to leverage this in our favor is by investing into gold, silver, and specific crypto projects. Because when fiat crashes, which I do suspect that fiat currencies are going to have a substantial turbulent time to usher in this new system, the best way to get around that is by holding gold and silver and even crypto projects. A lot of people will say, well, crypto is going to see a massive decline. I think everything will, but when the new system starts to rise, everything around the crypto space, what's left, I think utility projects will be left over. And the same goes for gold and silver. The value of those things are going to rise substantially because they're going to be utilized in a massive way. But this system, this new world order, it's already showing. There's a spotlight on it now. You just have to look at it. A lot of people are still ignoring this and they're still looking at, all of the noise around the news headlines and things like that. But look beyond that. Read between the lines on what's really going on here. We are witnessing the rise of the new financial system. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys definitely will like, subscribe, turn notifications on because I'm more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.